Hi boys. So today we are going to meet some more infinitives. So if you can get your books out, we're going to be making some notes. Make sure you are writing everything down, and obviously just pause, rewind, replay as many times as you want to make sure you understand what's going on. So we've met 3 different types of infinitives so far. So you need to write these 3 out just to remind yourselves what they are. Our most simple one that we've known for ages is the present active infinitive, which is the one that ends in re, and it just means to do something. So portare, to carry, trahere, to drag, audire, to listen, etc. We then met the present passive infinitive, which was the one that ended in ri or just the letter I, most commonly ri. And this is exactly the same as the present active infinitive, except it's passive. So it has, this person has that action done to them. So instead of to carry, to drag, to listen, it's to be carried, to be dragged, to be listened to. Okay, so it's passive. That action is happening to the person described. Okay. We then have the perfect active infinitive, which is the one we met most recently, which is the one that ends in isse, and that means to have done something. So portavisse, to have carried, traxisse, to have dragged, audivisse, to have heard. Okay. They are less commonly used in the translations mentioned here. We just need to know these translations so that we've got, obviously, a sense of what that word means grammatically. I mean, the present active infinitive, we often see to do something. I want to do something. I am able to do something. But these 2 are less common. And the reason that we're meeting these unusual infinitives now is because they form part of the indirect statement. Remember, the indirect statement is formed with an accusative and an infinitive. And when we translate the indirect statement, we don't translate the infinitive as an infinitive, so there's no to in our translation. We just translate it as if it's a normal verb. And we've mentioned before about the issues with tenses, etc. But we won't go into that too much now. We're just going to add a couple more infinitives. Okay, so you may have guessed, looking at that pattern, what the next one is that we're going to meet. So we are going to meet now the perfect passive infinitive. So write that as a new heading, or a subheading is fine. So the perfect passive infinitive. So we know what the present active looks like. We know what the present passive looks like. We know what the perfect active looks like. And now we're going to learn what the perfect passive looks like. Okay, so this one is translated literally as to have been something. Okay, the have bit tells us that it's perfect, and the been bit tells us that it's passive. So it tells us that the action is happening to that person. Okay, so that's how it's translated, and this is how it looks in Latin. So nicely, it's a bit of grammar that we already know. So it has the PPP, and then it has the infinitive esse, to be. So it literally means to be having been something. Okay, but we're obviously never going to translate it like that because we don't want to sound like total morons. So it literally translates in a slightly better way to have been something. If you think about this, it makes logical sense, because imagine this isn't an infinitive. Imagine this is just a perfect passive verb. You don't need to write this bit down. I'm just showing you as an example. If I wanted to say, I have been carried, I would say portatus sum. So you've got a form of the verb to be here, and then you've got a PPP here. So the infinitive of this whole thing is just the infinitive form of this, which is esse. Okay, so actually it's taking something that we already know and just putting the sum bit into the infinitive form. Okay, so that is what the perfect passive infinitive looks like. If you want to write out in full sentences in your notes, that's fine, but I don't mind if you're just making kind of jotted information here, as long as it makes sense to you. Now we're going to write out some examples below. Okay, so E.g., we can have portatus esse monitus esse. We can have tractus esse auditus esse cactus. So there's just some examples. Okay, have a little look at these, pause the video, see if you can figure out what they might mean, and then when you press play, I will reveal what they all mean. Okay, so the translations are as follows: to have been carried, to have been warned, not warmed, sorry, warned, to have been dragged, to have been heard or listened to, and to have been captured. So every single one of those has the to bit, which shows that it's infinitive, has the have bit that shows it's perfect, and has the been bit that shows that it's passive. Okay, that happens in every single perfect passive infinitive. Now, just to add a little bit of a complication, because the PPP is involved here, and we know that a PPP will agree with the noun it's describing in case, number, and gender, this will still happen even when it's part of the infinitive. So you can see here all these PPPs end in us, okay? That would only be the case if this was describing something that was masculine, singular, and nominative. Okay, so just like any normal PPP, if we were describing a woman in the accusative, instead of portatus esse, it will be portatam esse. Okay, if for captus esse to have been captured, we were describing something that was neuter plural, it would be capta esse. Okay, I don't need to list out all the different varieties of endings there because you know those endings, or you at least should. But it's just the PPP, as usual, following the first and second declension endings, just depending on what sort of noun it's describing. Okay, we're going to meet another infinitive now. Don't worry if you feel like being bombarded with a lot of information. These two infinitives just work quite well together, so it's nothing that much more complicated than the perfect passive infinitive. So we are now meeting the future active infinitive, and you might think this will look totally different from the perfect passive infinitive, but actually it really doesn't. So firstly, the translation, the way you would literally translate this is to be about to do something. Okay, some of you might be thinking, oh well, that be there makes it sound passive. It's not passive, because think about it logically. If you would say the boy is about to do something, you're using the word is there, but there's nothing happening to him, so it's not actually passive. It's just that you are in a state where you are about to perform an action, so it's still active. And I know it sounds a bit wordy, it's a bit of a long translation, but you will get used to it. And as I said before, within an indirect statement, you're going to translate these just as normal future verbs rather than these weird infinitives, to be, about to, blah blah blah. Okay, the way that they're formed then, so up here we had the PPP with esse for the perfect passive infinitive. This time, you might be able to guess this already, we've just got the future active participle with esse. Okay, so we've still got future here, we've got the active bit here, and then we have esse to show that it's an infinitive. Some examples then. Portachorus esse. I won't do all of these all over again, but monichorus esse, and let's have one more. capture us essay. Remember, for the future active participle, it's that you are in the middle, that that gives us the hint that it's future. And the translations of these ones then are to be, about, to, carry, to be, about, to, warn, and to be, about, to, capture. And just like the perfect passive infinitive, this ending will change to agree in case, number, and gender with the noun that it's describing. So it will only end in us if it's masculine, nominative, singular, and it will change its ending accordingly to agree with the noun that it's actually describing. So there you go. You've got the perfect passive infinitive, to have been something, and the future active infinitive, to be about to something.